point, and I started yelling out my buddy's name, Dobbs, Dobbs. And I got concerned for him, and I got on up the trail, and I got to an area where there was a clearing. Now, at this point, I'm almost up to the fire tower, because I'm almost up to the ridge. I certainly should have seen these guys, and at this point, the smell of smoke is heavy. There's an orange glow in the sky. We had a little moon. The moon had finally come out, and I didn't just have to use my flashlight to see, but I could see that orange glow in the sky, and I knew we had a forest fire. And as I moved up on the ground in front of me, something caught my eye, and I bent down, and it was Dobbs's hat. It was a ranger hat, and had a little pin on the front that, had reflected, and I'd seen it. And I got very concerned at this point, and I yelled his name as loud as I could. I just yelled Dobbs as loud as I could and screamed it over and over. And very close to me, I hear a voice that says, "Shut up, it'll hear you." And that scared the fire out of me because the voice was, 10 feet away from me. And, I turned around to look, and I took my flashlight, and I'm shining it around, and I finally saw him. And he had his back up against a rock, and due to the steepness of the trail, this rock, he could kind of lean on it and stay on his feet. And there were some scrub cedars, and he was kind of crouched, leaning backwards on this rock. And I just looked at him, and he said, "Turn that light off, get over here, it'll hear you." And so I did what he said, and I was walking over to him, and that's when it hit me. "But what do you mean, it will hear us? What are you talking about?" And we got over there, and he just pointed, and he had his gun in his hand. And so, I raised my carbine, and I'm looking around, and he points with his gun, and I look. Now, this is a small oval-shaped clearing. From our side of the clearing, we were just inside the woods. To the far side was maybe 35 yards. Not a long distance. I had shot that distance with a handgun easily. And, the smell of smoke was heavy in the air. The orange glow from just over the ridge. I knew if you'd walked over top of that ridge, you'd been able to see the fire. And there was just enough moon to where when we looked across that clearing and standing right at the edge of the clearing, we saw it. And it was tall. It dark. It was more backlit than front lit, so I really didn't get a lot of facial features or anything like that, except that I could see that it was tall. Its arms extended pretty low, like down almost to its knees, if not past its knees. And it apparently was moving diagonally, which would be the way the slope would go. But it had seen and heard me, and so it turned at the waist, and it was standing there frozen, just like we were. And Dobbs was pointing his gun in its general direction. I instinctively pointed my gun at it, and this thing stood there and stared at us. And I could see it had very large eyes, like a horse's eyes. And there was just enough light to where I got a little reflection off its eyes. And other than that, I didn't get any impression from it, except there was just no sound in the woods. You'd have thought all kinds of animals had been running and all kinds of stuff. That happened later. Right then, we were just frozen. And it was staring at us. And I knew by the way that the light was that it could see us plainly. And we were staring at it. And this was not a 1 second encounter. This was 30, 45 seconds of staring at this thing. And then it just crouched. And it crouched all the way down to the ground, and it's almost like its elbows was on the ground and its arms were extended out. And that's how long its arms were. And it just crouched, but the entire time it never took its eyes off of us. When it moved, I saw Dobbs react with his gun, and I thought he was going to shoot him. And the first thing that came to mind was my Uncle Bill scaring the bear, And I just pushed his arm down. Don't shoot it. It's not that I don't think we would have killed it. Just something told me don't shoot it. And we watched it, and it sniffed at the ground, and it used its arms to rake up some grass and sniff. And just as abruptly, it stood up, and it walked backwards into the woods. And by backwards, I'm talking about it took a step, a very deliberate, and then another deliberate step, and then another deliberate step, until it was far enough into the woods to where we really couldn't see it. And I'm sorry, bears don't do that.